Yo. Hey, this is Karen, Coach's Corner Chats, and this is our first ever Coach's Corner Roundtable. And real quick, let's get some introductions. So we'll start with Kai. Kai, where are you at and what are you up to?
Kai Edwards, head women's soccer coach, Southern Utah University in the Western Athletic Conference Division I.
Coach Mike, where are you at?
Houston, Texas, Director of Player Development for SG1 Soccer Club.
And Jess, where are you at?
Coach, I don't think can you hear me now?
Yep, we got you.
All right. Coach Jessica, I'm the assistant women's coach at Palomar College in San Marcos, California.
And then finally, Katie Smith, where are you at and what are you up to?
I will be an assistant coach at Arkansas State University, and then I am also involved in the local youth club in some capacity that is to be determined.
So one of the cool things about like this, what I'm finding out from the community is Katie started posting stuff on Twitter, some questions, and then she just came to me and DM'd me and said, look, I got more than just the one question I'm throwing out on Twitter, and I just want to get some insight from other coaches. Then I threw it out, and Kai, Coach Mike, and Jessica were kind enough to hop on with us. So, and I've kind of set them up, and we'll kind of roll through it and just kind of maybe as I put them up, Katie can kind of expand on why that question came to her. She's a young coach, so I think we've all been there where you're like, I think I'm doing good things, but maybe I'm missing the mark in some way. So one of the first questions that we'll talk about is when do you transition from equal playing time to playing better kids? And does it change when you're doing pay to play versus like high school or middle school?
Anybody want to really good question. That's a really good question.
I just don't know any of the answers, so that's the problem.
When I first started coaching high school, that was one of the questions I asked. Basically, I said, when do we coach for development and when do we coach to win? And the coach that I asked said, when you let me know, fine, figure it out, let me know. And I'm like, and to be honest, I coached the youngest ages all the way up to college. And if there's one thing that I have assessed of myself, especially over my last high school season, is that coaching at the youngest ages gives me this mentality of equal playing time. And there was some games in high school that I probably should have not played as many minutes for other players as I should have, or made changes that I didn't need to make because I was trying to give playing time. And so because of that, I feel like my next step should be to coach at a higher level so that I am more in a competitive kind of realm to make those tough calls. So that's kind of where I'm at in my own assessment of myself and my coaching.
Mike, we just talked about before we hopped on, you're kind of the guru in Texas of U10 kind of gameplay. What is your thought process when it comes to playtime for that age level? And then is there a part in your club where they transition, where you start to look at, hey, we got to start playing the better players?
Yeah, when you get up into the older age groups, our 2006s, 2007s, 2008s, and you're playing for national titles and national championships, there's going to be a true first group, right? And we have a true first group in those age groups that are going to get the majority of the minutes. That's just how it is. And you get yourself into a position to where you want to get more kids playing time, but at the same time, you also want them to feel that joy, all of them, of being a part of a championship, and especially national championships and things like that, where, by the time they get off the podium, they forget about how many minutes they played and they were just a part of it. And that's with the older groups. With the younger groups, I wouldn't say I don't even do equal playing time. I say I do everybody gets half a game, at least, minimum. Right? Because I don't know how many subs I'm going to have. If you're in a 7v7 match and you have 12 subs, I mean, not 12 subs, but if you have 12 players on your team, that's 5 subs. And so versus, if you have 8 players on your team. So it's the amount of playing time is going to vary based on how many, but I guarantee all of my players half a game minimum. So for me, that means everybody gets at least 25 minutes in a game because we play 25-minute halves. So I'm trying to get everybody 25 minutes minimum playing time in a game. So older age groups, high school and up, we basically we're trying to accomplish some things. We're trying to win there a lot. The teams have been narrowed down, and at our older age groups, we may only have one team in the age group. So it's not like we're not what would be considered a mega club, right? And so we've only got the one team. Therefore, everybody's getting a lot of playing time throughout the course of the season and whatnot. Anyway, so and that's the other thing that you look at. Is it a league game, right? What's your positioning in it, and all of those other things. So there's going to be times where you look at the schedule and go, all right, this week we've got a weaker opponent, and I can pretty much start any 11, and we're gonna dominate the match. So that's when you give a lot of minutes to the kids who would normally maybe only get 10 to 15 minutes a half, instead of the kids who play 40 minutes a half, right? With the younger kids, like I said, I don't really focus much on that. With the younger kids, I'm rarely in a dominant situation because I'm always trying to play them in a hard spot. So every one of my games with the younger kids is 2-1, 3-2, 2-0, 1-3 type thing. So high school is probably the age where I'd say, look, you're trying to get some things done there, and we're looking to be successful. Plus, those coaches usually have their job is on the line for stuff like that usually, right? So especially if you start high school coaches or even college coaches, their job's kind of on the line. The success matters for them.
I'll add a couple things to that. So I was blessed to work at AKA 3 mega clubs and be the coaching director for 2 of them. And the Girls Academy, Development Academy, and as ECNL. I'd almost start by, especially if you're an individual coach or young or whatever, reverse engineer the question so you can rely on the club's policy. So start with what does the club want, and then if something's ever in question, you can say, well, the coaching director wrote it. This is our policy, and I'm going by that. The way I did it when I had a development academy team that was very, very talented. We lost in the Elite 8 to the good Solar team, and the year before they lost in the national championship game. But what we did, or what I did especially, was I said the only game we will even mention the word winning is when we got to nationals. And they were 02, 03s at the time. So 16s, 17s, development academy. We had 3 national team players on the team, our pool players. And I got slack for losing a local game to a local club and whatever. But I was confident in the way we were building them. We would win enough games that would put us in a situation. And then when we went to nationals, and I had people upset because they didn't play in a couple of games. But I was very clear in August at tryouts, or July in tryouts, this is how we are going to approach it, is we're going to play football. Yes, there's kids who are going to play more. You're all going to play as long as you're doing the minimal standards. Are you at training? The little stuff. But we aren't mentioning winning, not even at the showcases, till we get to nationals. And then when we get to nationals, it's all about winning. And we're going to develop you, and our team was high school age, develop the mentality of, okay, there are times where you have to just go do things that help your team win. So that's my philosophy.
At the younger age groups, excuse me. I was going to say, at the younger age groups, I don't even, if I win too much, it's a problem, right? I even look at it like that. If I'm out there and I'm winning 30 games in a row, I don't have them in a challenging enough spot is my problem. So I'm using the games as a development tool. Like I'm U10, U9, U8. I shouldn't be out there winning a bunch of games and winning a bunch of blowouts. I should have my team in an appropriate place where I'm probably going to win half my games, lose half my games. And if I've got them in a good spot, those games are going to be relatively close. So we want the games to be challenging. We want it to be hard. That's how you develop grit. If you just give them everything, if you put them in an easy spot, the kids aren't going to they're not going to know how to fight. They're not going to know how to come back. They're not going to know how to struggle. So, I mean, part of developing, that heart, that fight, that grit is putting them in positions where it's going to be hard, and they're going to lose some games when you're doing that.
Katie, what was the impetus for this question? Like, what's kind of was that helpful, or what things were you looking for?
Yeah, so this question came to my mind. I coached middle school. I coached 2 middle school clubs and a middle school team. And so one of the things that I've always believed is middle school is that point where you transition, right? It's to prepare them for high school. It's to prepare them for now we're moving into that next step where not everyone's going to play the same. And I think we all agree that, yes, there are games where kids can get more minutes than others. And yes, when you can give kids minutes, you should, right? But I think the real crux of the question is when you've got a situation like exactly what Mike's saying, you're putting them in situations where we're playing difficult competition. We're playing competition that we're not just going to run through, right? Because that doesn't make us better. So everyone we're playing is the same level, if not a little bit better, maybe a little bit below us. So how do we balance? Like, yes, you need to get minutes and you need to develop, but at the same time, like we all said, I mean, a lot of people, they want to win. You get to middle school, like parents want to win. And when you don't, they get irritated, right? And especially if they feel like that you're losing because certain kids are playing and maybe they shouldn't be. And I think Kai made a good point that we can look on the philosophy of the club, but I think the reality is and that maybe is a whole other conversation, but a lot of clubs, or at least clubs that I have personally been a part of, it's like, hey, it's your team, do what you want. And there's really no philosophy in terms of playing time, whatever, when you get middle school, high school. Now the younger kids, absolutely. It's like you need to rotate. They all need to play half a game or try, equal minutes or whatever. But when you get older, it's kind of like you're the coach, do what you want. So when you don't have that philosophy to rely back on, and you don't have that ability to necessarily play teams that you can give a ton of minutes to kids that maybe wouldn't, because you're trying to put them in difficult situations to make them better, how do you start to balance that? And I think, like, we all touched on some different points, but the bottom line is when you're doing all the right things and you're playing teams that are challenging, how do you manage that? Because I think what I have started to wonder is, have I been doing that right? Like me, I've always been, I mean, we're playing to develop, but ultimately, like, when we're in a game, we're playing to win, right? Practice is when we develop, and then the game showcase what we've learned. So if you're not getting minutes, you're still going to develop under me, because our practices are going to be game-like, and they're going to be intentional, and they're going to build, and you're going to develop. But, playing time obviously it's not like it's not going to help you develop, right? So I can't say it doesn't matter at all. And this is the point where with parents, I've kind of had that like internal struggle of like, well, they are developing, but let's be real. I mean, losing playing time, you're losing development, right? So how do you navigate through that? And that's kind of where I'm at. Like, I just don't know, I guess, in reflection, like, have I been doing that right?
Let me throw
Go
in.
ahead, Kai. Go ahead, Kai.
So number one, if you haven't learned yet, you'll learn very soon. We try to make everyone happy. It's just not possible, right? So there's step one. Like, it's our ultimate goal is to try, but there's also a threshold that is just not going to happen because they signed up for competitive numbers. So at some point, their kid didn't get into Stanford or Yale, right? Like, at some point when you enter competitive realms, there's going to be winning and losing. You just hope when you enter competitive that you're always on the winning side. The other thing I'd add, because I coached in 1 or 2 smaller clubs in the Bay Area in a naturally competitive environment, and I had a 0304s. I think they were like a sophomore team and a junior team, basically. And part of it, and at that club I had a little bit more do what you want to do. I read what they wanted. So like my 04s, all they wanted to do is win. They weren't good enough, but all they wanted to do is win everything. And I said, all right, then this is the standard I am going to hold this team to with the players and the parents, because you asked for my advice. This is what I think it takes to do well in MPL. sophomore age, and the 03s were the complete opposite. They're U17s. They're like, we just want to enjoy, have fun. We have enough talent, we'll win some games. We're going to frustrate you because we're going to lose games we shouldn't. But in the end, we just want to hang out, be friends, and can you teach us some things? And I was like, okay, like I'm, and one of those kids start for me at Southern Utah. So, but 10 of them went to college and never even wrote a college coach. But that's what that team wanted. And the parents loved me because I delivered on what they wanted. The 04s didn't like me as much because all they wanted were championships and they weren't good enough for it. And I tried to push them to the level of what it took, and they didn't want to do everything. So I think part of it is, can you read what the environment you're either coming into or what you want, and then be almost inclusive at the older ages, right? Like same thing. I used to coach high school. Okay, you guys want to win a championship? Okay, well, some of you might miss out on playing time. Some of you, what are you that get playing time going to do for the kids you don't when it becomes an issue, right? So I think you can almost have that collaborative conversation once every 6 to 8 weeks with players and parents, right? Like anything, you bring them in on it, now they have ownership, right? Bring them in on it and be like, okay, well, then I think it needs to look like this, right? And now, and knowing that, 10 aren't going to be happy anyway.
Yeah, agreed. I think transparency changes so much for everybody, no matter what your coaching philosophy is. Something that my instructor said in my C license just a couple weeks ago was, it takes some cojones to do what you want to do. And so if you and your team are on the same page of what your development looks like, then you convey that to the parents, and you convey that this is what we're doing and this is what our team is going to be held to a standard to. Then again, transparency changes everything. And you do got to take a little guts too, because one thing I've learned, especially over the last 2 years specifically, is you need thick skin in this game. You cannot be a thin skin coach out here, because everybody's going to have an opinion of what you're saying, what you're doing, how you're doing it. Everyone's a sideline coach and thinks that they're better than you. And so there's such a subjectivity to coaching soccer that you have to just take ownership over it and really just like, no, this is what I want. These are my core values, and this is what I'm going to stick to.
Mike, you want to add anything to this chat?
Yeah, at the younger kids, like I said, I'm actually trying to figure out the breaking point. I'm trying to figure out the lose point for the players, right? I'm trying to figure out. I use the games not as a development tool, really. I use the games as the test to see if what we're doing in practice is being absorbed, right? So I couldn't care less if we win these games, lose games, or any of those other things. The winning and losing at U11, U10, U9, U8 is irrelevant. Nobody's going to win. Nobody's going to care about those. So those are like my tests to see if I'm doing a good job in training. If they're attempting to execute, whether they pull the execution off or not is almost irrelevant too. If they're attempting to execute the stuff that we trained on, then I'm doing a good job of getting it through to them. They'll get better at the execution the more they do it, right? But what I ask players to do is actually really hard. It goes against all of the little kids' natural instincts, right? Keeping possession, making good decisions, knowing when to dribble versus when to pass, when to pull the ball back, all of those things, playing with your head up. Playing with your head up is the opposite of what they want to do. They want to look at their feet and they want to look at the ball when they're 8 years old, right? And so it's more of the test. The games for me are more of a test to see if what I'm getting through. And we're gonna lose games because we turn the ball over trying to play out of the back instead of playing over the top, right? There's gonna be, and you can't get frustrated and upset. And when I hear parents go, "Oh, come on, what are you doing?" You go, No. They tried to do the right thing. Trust me, 6 months from now, 9 months from now, when they're pulling that off, it's going to be great. Just relax. Okay. We want them trying it. And if we yell at them now, they won't try it in the future because they'll look at all this yelling as punishment. Or if they get in the car and and all they hear from you is, "Why'd you do this? Why'd you do that?" Right? Then they're going to be scared to try it in the future. I don't want them scared to try it. I want them to keep trying. I want them to keep doing, because they're going to get good at it and they're going to start reading the situation better. So I honestly don't care if we win or lose. And like I said, I'm not using the game themselves as a development tool. I'm using them as a test to see if I'm doing a good job with them. That's what games are for me.
Let me throw in one more thing before you move on to the next question. I want to echo one of the things Mike said. He said a bunch of brilliant things, but I want to echo one of them, which I think is the key to the development winning battle. And you know me, I'm a straight shooter. If you are halfway decent of a coach, minus playing up a year or two, like he said, in 6 to 9 months, you will find a way to beat teams, because there's not that many great coaches in the country. So, like, I know we're not supposed to say that, but unless you're over challenging yourself, or your 10s playing up to 12s, where there's just going to be a battle. If 10s play 10s and you are a pretty good coach and you are using the game as your litmus test to, is your training coming out in the game, and then you are reevaluating what you do and reassessing and redoing in training, 6 to 9 months, you can make a 5-0 game be 1-5 the other way, because there's not that many. We weren't supposed to say it, but we said it.
I can't agree with you more. And it's interesting, because I've talked a lot, especially on Twitter, about imposter syndrome and how I feel being a Latina female coach. And the more spaces I put myself into, the more I'm like, I do know exactly what I'm talking about, and I probably know a little bit more than some of these people I've been intimidated by. And so, yeah, I completely agree. There's not that many good coaches out there.
I think one of the things I hear, and hopefully we'll get Katie back in the mix, is patience. Like, you're not going to become the greatest soccer player in like the flip of a switch. And especially at U7 and U8, it's too hard to tell who's going to stay after it and continue to develop in that. So I think that's where the winning and development has to become key. One of the other questions that Katie brought up when I was talking with her was, and we've kind of touched on this a little bit, can you develop players in practice who don't get to play a whole lot? How do you like delve into them and put into the players so that when they do have a chance to jump on and make some, what have you? And then the other one, and this is one she put out on Twitter, should starters stay the same? Do you rotate them? I know Kai had some input on this one on Twitter. Do you change it up? How do you change it up? How do you explain it to people? Parents don't understand, like, you started last game. Why aren't you starting this game? And how important are practices? Mike just talked about that game is his evaluation. So then how that means to me, the practices are vital.
Yeah, and I want to expand on that second question before you guys get into it. So the second question, and this is why I pose this question, because I hear a lot of coaches go on this, and like I said earlier, we can all agree that in certain games, when you can give players more playing time, you should, right? But I think the and here's why, okay? I see or I starting, and it's almost like playing the game seriously. Right up.
Katie, you're breaking up. Yeah, Katie, you're breaking up a little bit.
Can you hear me?
Yes, but barely.
Poor thing.
Yeah. She's the youngest one on the mix.
I know. I feel so bad for her.
Well, let's let's just kind of start, and then hopefully when she gets in, we'll rock and roll on that. We'll see if she can figure her tech on that side. Kai, let's just go with you, because I know you had a comment about this on Twitter. Sorry to catch you on, but what do you do when it comes to rotating starters, and like what's the importance of practice and what have you?
Well, I'll mainly deal with 13 and up. I don't think it's that important, because at some point, I think there is a meritocracy. I kind of go back to the vision of the club, but if we're talking in general, I think there is a meritocracy that you also don't want to dilute and punish kids for being talented. I've been blessed to coach numerous teams with national team players on it. So part of my task is always maximize the individual, right? So if I'm just rotating the starting center mid from the U17 national team to right back for fun, well, she's going to stop making the national team. So it's hard to have the sweeping generalization of what you should do or shouldn't do. So everything has to be within context. I don't think you can get that much better without having the litmus test of a game. I think you can get better at practice, but at some point you start to learn this kid's fast, this kid does this kid always scissors this. Like at some point, the cadence of your coach of, okay, we're going to do this next or this, and you lose the contextual content or of seeing the game and learning the game because you're at the same field, the same numbers, same grid. Us coaches only have so many drills past 6 months, right? So when you're playing different games and this team's a long ball team, short team, whatever, then you're challenged to think in a way that usually makes us coaches go back, okay, I didn't prepare them for that. Why didn't I? Oh, I was only stuck in this way. So I think the game is a necessity for joy and for the test. I think it's very liberal arts-ish. If you're like, we're just going to study all year and never take a final, okay, am I good or am I not, right? But you join competitive athletics for that answer at some point. And I think in rotating players, I think younger ages, I'll defer to the genius of Texas. But I think at older players, I think there's a time and place. But I also, my personality is at some point, jack of all trades get beat by specialists. And I think there becomes a moment where you have to create a functional dominance on the field, where 10 years ago, jack of all trades were full scholarship kids because they could do everything. Now people are like, you have a flip throw, full ride. You can head every ball, full ride. You can score free kicks, full ride, right? Because they're a specialist. So I think there's a balance of it, but I also think it goes to what does your club want? What's your team want? And how can you best maximize individual player performance and experience while keep it in a team setting, which is very difficult to do. But yeah, I'm not a big rotate to rotate. I think younger age maybe, but at the oldest, if I'm at every practice and I'm the best player and I score 3 goals, don't punish me.
All right, Katie, you're back. Let's try this again.
Okay, I think it's fine now, but this kid is riding a 4-wheeler back and forth, so I'm not having good luck tonight. This is like the country life. Okay. But anyways, so basically what I was saying, to keep a long story short, is, when you go the route, so like you're playing a team and maybe they're not great and you think that you should beat them pretty well. And so you'll start a group that maybe never starts. And then it kind of gets to the point where almost your kids don't even take the game seriously. Right. And so, at the college I was at, we had this situation happen and we started a lineup that would probably have never started. And the game started off super slow. And it wound up being like a game where we just could not get in the groove of anything. Like we could not find the back of the net. We could not find passes going forward, and things that we usually do well with, we really struggled. And it was like, we just didn't start the game off on the right foot. And so I guess for me, the question becomes like, when you have those games, do you start the best group, get out of the gate strong, and then make subs as you go? Do you try to let other kids start? Because it is important for players. And I think at least high school and younger, it's important for players to learn how to come off the bench. And I think there is an important part of like your best player. Maybe this is another debatable thing, but maybe shouldn't always start because they need to learn how to come off of the bench and how to come and impact a game later on. And so I guess the question is just like, how do you, and I know there's no one right answer, but how do you try to balance that and kind of get those kids the opportunity to try and come off the bench and try to start games and try to be involved in these different roles while also not putting the team in a tough spot or being overconfident or whatever.
Michael, let me jump real quick. So I had one of those games in college for the first time ever this year when we went down to the South and played a SWAC school. I always believe in winning levels, college, whatever, start your best players every single time. And usually start the second half. And we were up 7-0, and I started my best players in the second half and just subbed them quickly after we started at a level. I also think sometimes we overthink things, and when you fabricate a situation, if they are your best player, they'll know it's fabricated. So you're actually not training them to come off the bench because they know they're just rotating and rotate. They haven't actually been put on the bench, right? Like, and the intention is brilliant, but in actuality, if they're really that smart or that good, they're going to be like, well, I'm not really learning how to come off the bench. She's just doing it to do it. Where if they're put on the bench because of performance, which most kids see, okay, you moved up 8th grader, I'm a freshman in high school, I moved to varsity, JV to varsity, I'm on the bench, right? That's earned, or like I've been blessed, they go to national team camp and travel to England and don't play 2 games. Okay, that's earned. That gave them more hunger than if I put them on the bench on the team they know they're the best in. I think that starts to create drama unless you have a clear vision on why, and it's transparent and clear to the player, the parent, on why you're doing it and what you're hoping to get out of it.
Yeah, I appreciate that because this was something and I'm very open-minded and I think we all should be, right? But this is something I never did and I never thought of. But then I actually saw something and some people were discussing this and it kind of changed my mind. But now that I'm listening to you, I'm like changing my mind back. I'm like, yeah, no, they should actually start. So I don't know. I'm very big in the camp of like the best players should start. But then I don't know, a few months ago, I was kind of like, well, is that right? And now I'm like, yeah, I think it is. So, I always go back and forth on things, I think, but I like that answer.
I think again at the older ages in high school, for example, I did not change my starting lineup for league. When I was messing with my lineup to see what I wanted and who I wanted where, that was in preseason. But come league, this was now the only different game of that was senior night because I had 11 seniors. So I started 11 seniors and some of them started in different areas, whatever. And you could see the difference. You could see that we weren't starting up as fast as we normally do. We were sitting back a little longer than we normally do, things like that. But again, like you said, that's a different situation. That's senior night. I'm not going to take that away from them. They're going to get to start that night. Some of those girls will never play another soccer game in the rest of their lives. So I'm going to give them that opportunity. But at the youngest ages, a lot of it also comes with like, they like it. Like they want to play. They want to own that position. I had a player, she loves playing defense. And no matter what I did to try and push her outside, push her in the middle, push her up top, and she had fun, did well each place. Every time though, she's like, I just really like playing defense. And so who am I to tell her no? Who am I to tell her no? I'm going to rotate you around. So I think, again, there's a balance between the youngest ages being able to learn and develop. I don't like to pigeonhole kids, especially with just certain positions under the age of 10, 11. They start to specialize, I think, a little bit more in middle school. And that's when you can start to really also turn into that motivation of, I want to start. I want to be on the, instead of I know I'm going to be there, I want to be in the starting lineup.
Mike, what are your thoughts on this? I know you said you have a top team. We know they're the top team. How do you handle that starting rotation versus maybe some of your more developmental groups coming up?
So this is actually a question I get asked quite a bit. And so it's pretty first. The first thing was that the part of this is, how do I know where kids are going to be good, or how do I know where to position kids early on in early in their development? And it's funny because what I do is I feel like every kid has a natural feel for where they want to be on the field. Their instinct puts them all in a different spot, right? If you throw a ball out there, if you say, okay, here's some pennies for you guys go put yourself over there, you guys put yourself over there, right? Just make two teams, throw them on the field, and you'll watch them set themselves up, right? You'll watch some kids' natural instinct is to play way behind the ball. Some kids' natural instinct is to be on the ball. Some kids' natural instinct is to be in front of the ball, right? And so I can look at it and go, okay, that kid's going to be a defender. That kid's going to be in the midfield. That kid's likely. That's where their natural body positioning feels comfortable in relation to wherever the ball is, right? And that's how I kind of start positioning players the first time I start building a team. And so I can say, okay, these kids are going to start out on defense because if you put them out there and the way they feel it, they're going to stay in position. Okay, you can say, okay, you're left back. You're going to stay back automatically. Why would I fight that, right? And you're going to want to be on the ball. You're a midfielder. You would like to play way in front. We'll start you out, and then we'll rotate you later. Okay, but let's put them where they're comfortable early on. And I probably handle player rotation a little bit different than most, because if I say, okay, you're left back, you're left mid, you're center mid, you're striker, I leave them there for like 6 to 9 months. I've got years with these kids. I don't have to rotate them every game. Okay, I want them to get good, learning the position, learning the movement, learning how to see it. And then, I'll move them 6 to 9 months later to a different position. And so I want them to understand, because if they're playing 10 minutes here, 10 minutes there, and 10 minutes here, right? They probably didn't learn anything during those minutes. And so they need to be in a certain position for a long period of time to really understand how that is played and how the game is played. They get comfortable, and then once they get comfortable with the positioning, they get comfortable learning decision making. And so I probably handle it a little bit different than most coaches. Now, on to the other part of this. Are starters important? When do you have starters versus coming off of the bench? For me, at my age group, starters aren't important at all until resubs are not allowed. Once a player's pulled, if you're not allowed to put him back in, that's when whoever is a starter starts mattering, right? That's when that matters, because if I have 25-minute halves, and if I'm subbing kids for a half minute, that would be the insinuation that the first 12 and a half minutes is more important than the second 12 and a half minutes, and it's not. It isn't more important. So, if a kid's going to get half a game, that it doesn't really matter who the starters are. I don't really have a starters group to be. Now, if I know my opponent, I do have a 7 and that I like. If I were to pick 7 starters on a 7v7 game, I know who my 7 would be, right? If I had to go into a tournament final and I had 7 starters, right? I know who my 7 are, right? But I may rotate those kids all season long, just for me, the first 12 and a half minutes of the game aren't more important than the second 12 and a half minutes. And so once parents typically find that out, they're generally pretty okay, with, their kid coming off of the bench or not starting, because starting doesn't generally matter that much at U9, U10, U8. So because the kids are just going to be rotating throughout the course of the game anyway, as far as minutes go. And so like she was saying before, I have players who want to play defense, right? They love it. I have a little girl on my 2015 boys team. She's an incredible defender, and she gives everything she has every time I put her back there. And if I tell her, you know what, I need you to go play striker, the shoulders drop, the head goes back. Oh, okay. I mean, she'll do it for me. But when I tell her, hey, go to left back, she's in there and she's ecstatic. She just loves playing defense, right? And so I want her experience to be fun for her, and I want her to enjoy the game. And part of my job is to help players fall in love with and continue to be in love with the game. That's a big part of my job at my age groups. And if I'm always making her play somewhere she doesn't want to play, now there's times when I need her skill set in a different spot, right? Tactically, I may make a tactical adjustment, and and be like, no, you're electric up there. I need you up there for right now, right? Go show me you, right? But she'll get it. If I build her up a little bit, like, no, I need you up there. I need your skills. I need your talent up there right now. If I hype her up a little bit, she'll be happy to go in. But if they set themselves up, she goes, I'm left back. and so it's just that so I'm trying to, it's a fine balance between helping the, kids want to be there, right? You can't make a kid want to be there. You can help them to want to be there, but you can't make a kid want to do it. So, but as far as starters go, at my age groups, the last 12 minutes of a half are just as important as the first 12 minutes of a half. And so though it doesn't really matter. Now, tactically, have I started some bench players? Yes, I have. Because there are times when I want to maybe catch my opponent in his shift, because I know most coaches will start their best 7, right? And then they'll go to their weaker group. And then if I put my stronger group in, I'll catch them on the shift, right? So tactically, I might be doing something, but the minutes aren't going to change, and who starts really doesn't necessarily matter.
So then moving on to the next question, I think this is one that's brought up a lot by coaches, is the idea of like unopposed versus opposed versus do you do, 1,000 touches? Do you need to get that? Do they need to be able to juggle? Is like, what is for Katie, what's the bang for the buck that she's going to get in her session where she can crush it, knowing that she's going to, I guess, fully develop their players to the best ability? I don't know if I don't want to speak for you, Katie, but that's the feeling I got from this question.
Yeah. So just for context from me. So ever since I first began coaching, I've only used modified games. And this was, I guess, 4 years ago when I started coaching. And for me, it was just something that it made more sense, right? They're going to learn the best by being in the game. And I think as I guess time has gone on, that's become more and more of a conversation. And so I guess I'm trying to figure out if
Perfect time.
We get the gist.
Katie, bless your heart. So, I mean, I think we all kind of know where she's going with this. Oh, are you there?
I have Wi-Fi until I start talking, and then it just stops working for some reason. I don't know. But I'm going to get through this so fast so that doesn't happen.
Yes, you are.
But basically, my question is, I've never used isolated skills training. And so I'm starting to wonder if that's something that I need to incorporate. And if so, to what extent? Obviously, I think at the younger ages, you need it because they need to learn. But then as you move to like middle school, high school, college, how much do you guys do that? How important do you feel it is? What would be kind of like your idea of how to mix that in? And I guess just would my teams benefit from me doing that, or is all modified games good? I just am kind of looking for some thoughts.
Whew.
Who wants to take this one first?
Uh-huh.
Well, I'll jump in. I'm assuming you coach teams, right, Miss Katie?
Yes.
All right. You don't need to do isolated skill training. Okay. I don't do isolated skill training. And I have 7-year-olds and 8-year-olds. As a club coach, my job is to, as a team coach, it's the only time they're with the team, right? They can do isolated skills training at home. They can train on their own at home. With me, I have to do things. It's the only time that I have the team in the collective, if that makes sense. So I work on things that can only be worked on when they're in the collective, like decision-making, spatial awareness, playing with your head up, right? And so things that make them cognitively better players. You need to have, you need to have the team together to work on those things. You can't work on scanning in the backyard. You can't work on decision-making in the backyard. You can't work on understanding how to play in the gaps in between the lines in the backyard. You need the rest of the team to do that. And so when they're with me, that's what I work on. They can do all the dribbling skills in the backyard they want. They can work on their first touch off of a wall or with a parent or sibling. They can, do dribble through cones till their heart's content. They can do all of those things in the backyard. What I'm being paid to do is to teach them the game. And so I work on the things that can only be worked on when they're in the collective as a group. So the things that they can do individually, I tell them that's for you to go home and work on. If you don't go home and work on and get better at that, somebody will catch you eventually and leapfrog you and take your spot, right? It's a meritocracy still. And so you have to go home and work on that. Right now, you might be part of my best 10 for a 7v7 team, but two seasons from now, you might not be if somebody on the second team or in the second group, and there's not a big gap between those groups, is working harder than you at home, and their first touch is improving, and their skills are improving and whatnot. And you can have those conversations with young kids as long as you don't sound like a jerk when you're doing it. But you can have those conversations with younger players and say, hey, look, right? I one of the talks I give 9-year-olds is you all are on the first team right now. There's a second team. Everybody on the second team is trying to get where? To the first team, right? Can I carry 18 kids on the first team? I cannot. So if somebody from the second team moves to the first team, what has to happen? Somebody from the first team needs to move where? To the second team, right? They'll get it. And I'll tell you what, they fight like heck in training. They work. My players work hard. And I know there's probably going to be some detractors of that in our little comments, but that's how iron sharpens iron, and that's how you develop that grit and that heart and that fight. And my players send me videos all the time of them juggling and working at home and all the other things. So to answer your question, when they're with the team, you work on team things. That's my opinion, at least.
Any other opinions on that? Maybe at the college level, Kai, Jessica, you've had some experience there. What do we do at that point?
Go ahead, Jess.
I mean, I can't say it's individualized like ball and person, but we do our touches on the ball every day. It's our veggies we get every morning. So before training, like it's part of our warm up. Before games, we have cones set out so they can do their whatever, it's like inside out touches, zigzags, whatever, just a short little touches on the ball, because that's something that I just kind of think from the youngest to the oldest, like you have to be touching the ball. You have to be, the more you touch the ball, the better you get at it. And so that's kind of where I like it, as much as we would love to send kids home and have them doing things at home, they're not all doing them. I think one of the things that Mike touches on a lot on Twitter is that it's the culture that he's around. The kids there grow up in a culture that want to do this, that want to be, better and work hard and do things on their outside. I see the split in both of my two kids. Like my daughter loves playing soccer, but if I'm like, hey, go outside and kick a ball, she's like, yeah, I'm good. But my son is constantly dribbling his Snorlax around my house because he can't stop kicking anything in his life. And so, I don't have to say anything to him. He'll go outside and kick the ball. I have a futsal ball rolling around my house right now because I've decided that at least that one will stay on the ground. But so I think that those touches are super important, but I do think that you can get them in game like situations and not necessarily just individualized one person with the ball, because that is very boring, and that's even boring as a coach, like to teach. So it's hard to, that's something that I really focused on, like Corver this year, and that was awesome. I loved the skills that the girls were learning, but it was just a lot of time and pretty boring. So I had to make incentives for them. I made them these little cards that every time they filled up their skills, I would get them a Gatorade. And so, that was the like incentive to do it on their own and things like that. But yeah, touches and things like that's just, it's your veggies. You got to do a little bit of every day.
I would say in the age groups you just asked me and Jess about, I mean, you could train one day a week and just watch video. No one cares. You either win or you lose, right? So in the end, it honestly, I mean, I'm a contract coach, right? So if I win, I get another contract. If I lose, I don't. They can care less the process of how I got that. And I learned that the hard way about 10 years ago. We played great, beautiful soccer and got crushed by Julie Ertz and a bunch of other teams. So it didn't matter. They were like, you didn't win. It doesn't matter if they got better. Win, right? So I will also add, and one thing I've become a little more understanding about, I would say, because I think I used to be the old, what would you call it, Army, Alabama football coach from the 50s. Like, we're going to do it this way. Everyone's fitting in this way, and this is how we're going to do it. I live by the phrase, there's never and never and never and always. So I think the group on this conversation is your perfect example. South Texas, somewhere in the South, Arkansas, San Diego, the mountains of Utah and Ohio, like our approach to what our environment or a group of people might be slightly different to enhance what our group of people are most passionate about. So like, I think of a couple of things. I had to write them down, but I used to do it with my team that was in Detroit, and we would do once a month. Now I also had them 4 days a week, but once a month we would do a purely isolated training. And the reason was, when we all say the game's the teacher, they get, okay, well, at some point we have to teach them if they don't watch soccer and live in a full culture of soccer. So instead of battling, why aren't you doing it? Why aren't you doing it? Well, we reverse thought about it. Well, why aren't they doing it? Competency. They weren't competent of what to do at home by themselves, right? So we would train once a month for, maybe it was just 30 minutes at the beginning of training, and we do 5 or 6 individual isolated exercises they can do at home. So now there's definitely no excuse of, I don't know how to do it. What should I do? It didn't hurt them, right? And we had them more, but we would train them so they knew what they were doing. Now, if we have to do that for 3 years, that's its own problem, right? But if we do it for 3 months, 4 months, where you're giving them tidbits, it changes the game, you make it fun, give them an ice cream, whatever, you're enhancing their competency to do it at home also. But then I also say, and I'm from the Tovo school, so and I've sat with being at a coffee shop for 3 hours, going back and forth on things. I also say, well, why are you doing it? Is the bigger question. Like, half the time I do it is, I hate to call it, team bonding. Like, we'll do a passing exercise versus a passing exercise. First team to 10 dribbles across wins. Like, so it's isolated, but it's like a little more rah-rah bonding, get people out of their comfort zone, like supporting each other, cheering, dealing with the pressure of winning a quick game, juggle ladder or whatever. Do I think you should do it for an hour, 4 days a week? No. But if you win at our level, no one cares. But if you do it, 15 minutes, or like, we'll do a tight, Y or IX triangle for 5.5 minutes. We'll set the timer and we'll go fly, fly, fly. And we do it to finish the warm up for us. So getting them warm, it makes them communicate louder early, coaching, stuff like that. If I was doing it to teach decision making, scanning, and whatever, then I think I fail. But if someone asked me, why'd you do a passing triangle? I'd be like, oh, just get some of our quieter people talking early, get some combining. Yeah, there's some visuals of indigo out and whatever, but it's also fun. We play for competition, points over the week, but we don't do it for the max of 10 minutes, right? And the max. And when you do it enough, your max can go shorter because they have an understanding of what you're trying to do. So I think you ask yourself, well, why am I doing it? And then you're time sensitive to, is your why on why you're doing it equal to the time you're spending on it? And then my last part, it goes back to never, 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 and always. What I've also learned is not everyone learns the same. So some of our kids, even at the college level, only learn by doing. What's that, kinesthetic? Then we have kids that they can do it and then have to come back in the office and have to see it on video. And then there's groups that need to call me and train at 10 a.m. the next day to walk through it one-on-one because there's too much going on, right? So understanding learning behaviors and styles, and I think isolated training with opposed, with small-sided, big game, whatever, hits a lot of training notes. And sometimes some of those kids are like, I can't understand when so much is going on, where some kids only understand when it's all going on. So I think in context of time and space and all that, if you present enough ways of learning to people, you'll hit more people. And to be honest, it goes back to the original question. Well, you could be halfway through a season and be like, well, my whole team's kinesthetic now, or these two kids always need to be pulled out to the side and see it isolated, quiet, called in 10 minutes before practice. And we're going to work on this turn. Hey, go left, go right. Like, I have 3 kids on my team that are completely if then that kids. And they don't want anything else. They don't want to be creative. They want to be now part of the community we live in our state. They want to be successful. They want to hit the mark. They want to do that. Then I got the kid from Huntington Beach that wants her own freedom, do whatever, and she just wants you to give her 20 ideas and choose. So I think it's never and always.
All right,
Yeah,
so we're gonna.
That
Oh, go ahead.
really quick, that reminded me of COVID. When we finally got back on the field, we had the kids in 6x6 boxes so they couldn't touch each other, and everything was a relay, because otherwise standing there in that box doing whatever you're doing by yourself was so boring. So that's where the kids learn, like, competition is more fun than just hanging out. So that just reminded me of that really quick.
All right, so we've got 3 more questions from Katie. So hopefully you can stay on. If you have to hop off, feel free. But we'll try to get through these ones. So her next question, which I think is another one that's another big one, is Katie. I know she's throwing some zingers out here. Isolated fitness, like, people already. I'm seeing stuff on Twitter because the preseason for college is coming up. Everybody's talking about the beat test and the Man United and the Cooper and whatever other stuff there is. Or do you just let them play the game and get fit playing the stinking game? Is it worth running sprints, or you have to run a mile in 6 minutes, or any of this stuff? Because what happens when 14 of your 20 can't even hit the mark? Are they not good soccer players? I don't know.
I'll knock this one out real quick for the.
I know. I saw you post a video of your 8-year-olds running hills. What are you talking about?
Yeah, we saw.
With a parachute on their back. I saw.
Yeah, that ain't happening with me. We're into the little kids. I can knock that out for you real quick. We don't do any fitness. They got more energy than I don't know what to do with anyway. So I mean, I wish they had a USB port that I could plug into to borrow some of their energy into me, right? Yeah, no, I don't do any fitness testing with little kids. So
yeah, and I think it's those older groups where this question really becomes the one that becomes tricky. I think with little kids, everybody's like, yeah, they're full of energy, but I think it's like when you move into like maybe middle school, but definitely high school. I mean, I worked at a high school where we did like 5 fitness tests and they couldn't play until they passed. And like, I thought that was crazy, but the head coach did it every year. So I don't know. I mean, for me, like when I'm the head coach, we don't do any fitness training on our own because, one, I think if you design sessions well enough, you can get them in shape by playing, and you can get them in shape using the game, which is a lot more fun. And then they're getting in game shape. Like we all know, like being able to run a mile in 6 minutes is very different than being able to play a soccer game, right? Because in soccer, you have to sprint and then you have to stop and then you might make another sprint, So it's more than just being able to run. And so I think that, like, for me, you should teach it or make them fit through the game and through practice, and you design it in a way that can happen. But I was curious for Kai and Jess, like, is this something that you guys do in your environments, or how do you tackle this at the college level?
I feel like Kai is going to throw the never quote again. Like, you know what? Some of the kids love to go for sprints, and if that's what they want to do, I mean, maybe knowing your environment.
I mean, I did just do a 1-hour webinar last week on this exact question with Beyond Pulse. But I think there's 2 things. In college in the spring, you can train with them 8 hours and 4 hours can't do with a ball. So you're almost pigeonholed into doing it because you can't do anything else. So you're like, if I'm going to maximize the 8 hours a week, I might as well do it, right? Instead of have them do absolutely nothing. And we asked our fitness test. We don't do it, but we also have GPS and heart rate monitors. So, we can monitor where we think they are relative to the game. But I also think there are some kids I have on my team that there's nothing I can do with training because their level are 1 to 2 are much higher. So the environment can't produce. The best I can do is tell them, like, try to hit this distance on your GPS in a time, because the players on the team won't challenge them enough compared to when we play BYU or someone else, right? So for them to get to the fitness level demand that we need them to be at versus the top level of our conference, we have to have them do separate things, sometimes isolated, to get some other cardiovascular, because the training, it's not always possible for every kid. Yes, the middle and the bottom, of course. And to be honest, the bottom is over revving their engine. But some of the top kids, it's not possible, for all of them, unless doing some things where you isolate it for time periods. We also, I worked for Greg Ryan in Michigan, and we, what's it, match day -2 or 3, whatever it is. We would do HIIT training for everyone, starters, everyone. We would do high intensity interval training in a short period of time for 25 minutes every Tuesday, just to get an isolated workout, then go train. Because the best time to get fitness is when they're fresh. If you're doing it at the end, you're not really working on their fitness, you're working on like their mental strength. So we do it at the beginning when they're fit for 25 minutes, then we go into 4v2s, whatever. But yeah, I think there's time and place. There's sometimes, like, we have a bye week. You have 2 weeks or 13 days between games where you want to keep the fitness up, but maybe you don't want contact. Right. So now for us, because we have monitors, we might say, okay, we're going to try to simulate the 9,800 meters that you do in a day at the intensity level of 80% more of your max for 6,000 meters. So how do we create it? Okay, repeat 120s in 18 seconds, with a 30-second jog back or whatever that is, to replicate without contact. Because if we always do the game, especially in a bye week, we are putting ourselves at risk for that kid who's going to play 90 to get hurt, at some point. So, but we still need them to stay at match fit.
Yeah, I mean, we're not as fancy, and we don't have heart monitors and people telling me what level their heart rate's at and all that. And maybe I'm gonna start asking my girls to wear their Apple Watch and then just report back to me and let me know how that goes, right? I'm alive, I'm good. I'm good, coach. But yeah, I mean, yeah, it's not enough to just play a game. There's a reason we have preseason. Here we get to do like a 3-week summer class. So during that 3-week summer class, we pretty much go pretty hard, at least 30 to 45 minutes of the beginning of training, especially in those first 3 weeks, because we don't have like 2-a-days and things like that. So that's kind of how we did it last summer. And yeah, we had girls, in the trash can and in the class, in their bathroom, and we had girls also who didn't return because my little my area is a little bit different at a junior college. It's just like if they want to come or if they don't, especially last year when we had just taken over and just kind of had girls sign up for the class. But this year it's going to look a little bit different for us, which is exciting because we get to take control of that. But yeah, I mean, we have to hit them, especially at the junior college, because they've probably been sitting and doing nothing since their last either high school game or their last state cup game or whatever they played with their club team, and just chilling really hard. And then they're like, oh, I think I'm going to play college soccer again, and come and reach out to us. Cool. We want you, all of that. But yeah, we got 3 weeks to get you ready to play a game. So there's definitely, at our level, we need to push isolated fitness.
Well, let me give one more scenario. So, we play Thursday, Sunday, so we could be, and we have Monday off, so we could be gone for 6 days. And let's say 8 kids don't travel. Our kids who traveled and started maybe, 20,000 meters or whatever, right? But we have a metric on what they've done at a game pace. Well, our kids at best at home can play 4v4, so, which is fine. But at some point, you can manipulate the exercise, but sometimes you're over fabricating them striking longer balls or, there is a time you might have to make a half field sprint or a track back. So when they don't travel, it's the same. They do a isolated fitness workout, trying to get their distance, heart rate, all that stuff up. Then they'll play whoever's there, 3v3, 4v4. But it's naturally going to be in a smaller space, or the intensity level is going to go tremendously down. And then after 3 non-travel trips, they're so far behind to the starters. And now you've bridged you created a bigger gulf in the group, and now you're dealing with more issues. So I think that's one of the biggest challenges at the highest level, when playing time comes into effect and travel comes into effect, is how do you keep number 15 through 26 prepared if they have to play a lot in the last 4 games, right? And we ran into it twice last year. And one of the kids of the 2, you couldn't tell she hadn't played in 5 weeks. Like, she was at their match fitness level, was ready to go, was as close to match fitness as possible, because she still, didn't deal with 11v11 at a pace. But there's never and never and never and always.
All right. So next question is going to come up, and the one nice thing for Katie is I'll share her the link so she can actually see all the answers that we share. So here's our next question, and this is an awesome one because we all know we love parents. And so our question is, do you allow them to watch your sessions? Do you give them copies of sessions? Like, how much do you let parents in? And does this change as you get older? And what kind of parent education do you have in place? How do you get the parents involved without them maybe getting too involved? I don't know.
Wow. This is an interesting one, because parents at every level are different, right? I mean, here's what I say. The parents on the first team, right? When you play at the highest level, regardless of the age group, and I don't care if you're talking about 7-year-olds or if you're talking about 17-year-olds, the parents at the highest level are psychotic as a general rule. All right. They're a little crazy. Okay.
We're live, remember?
That's okay. That's fine.
Off the record.
I've sent out plenty of memes that understand. My point on parents is very well out there. So they're a little crazy, but their kids are good because they're crazy, right? To some extent, their kids play all the time. You take my first 15s, my first U9s, my first team U9s, right? Those kids are playing 6 and 7 days a week. They're doing 2 days a week of futsal outside of me. Then they've got the training time that they spend with me. They've got private trainers and stuff like that. There's a reason why they are where they are, right? It's because the parents are nuts. And I get it. Second team parents are a lot less crazy. They've got pretty decent kids. They show up to the games, they clap, they cheer, woo, 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 and all that other stuff. By the time you get down to the fourth team, those parents are bringing margaritas to the game. And they don't even know that, there's a game going on. They're there to have fun, right? You're lucky some of them. I had parents bring a barbecue one time to a game, all right? And it was low. I'm thinking of giving up first team soccer for a bit just to hang out with the fourth team parents so I can have some carne asada and some margaritas mid-game. And so it's just the parents are different at the different levels, but at no level do I let them influence what's going on, right, with me. At no level. I've told the best. I've lost really, really good players because I've told them, look, there's a lot of work to do here, and I know you think your child is good because the plan for him his whole life has been get your kid the ball, let him score, right? That's been the plan for your kid his whole life. He doesn't really understand the game. So I have to kind of go backwards to go forwards, and with reprogramming your kids. And so none of them ever influence what I'm doing, though. You never let a parent influence what I'm doing. There's plenty of soccer clubs out there. If you don't like what I'm doing, there's another club down the street. That's how I operate. And I'm not in sales. I'm not there to keep them. I'm not there to, I'm not on commission. That's not how I work. And I'm going to do what I'm going to do. And I say like this, look, I'm a product. My service is a product. The way I coach, the way I teach, the way I educate is a product. There's a ton of products out here, right? And if you were to go out and let's say you wanted to buy something to wash your clothes, right? And Tide wasn't getting your clothes clean the way you wanted it clean, you'd switch to Cheer or something, right? You'd switch. I'm a product. If you don't like what I'm doing, leave, because I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing. And if all 10 leave, I'll make 10 more that play just like them. That's my philosophy. That's the way I handle things, right? They can just take off. They all know this. And of the 40 players I coach, I lost one this past offseason. That's it. So it's not, they know this, they'll get used to it. And frankly, they'll respect it. But you do need to be open with them about, here's what we're going to be working on. Here's what I'm doing. Here's where we're going to get. Now, it helps if you have a reputation as a coach, right? I'm not going to lie there. But if you lay out a plan, you say, look, this is where we're at now. This is where I want us to be in 6 months. This is what I want us to look like a year from now, right? And I've got a plan to get you there. They're usually pretty cooperative. They're not unreasonable. They might be crazy with the amount of money they're willing to spend on their kids, right? And psychotic. I'm not lying. I got kids. I got 8-year-olds training in Spain and in England right now in summer. And so it's nuts, right? But that's they're off doing Arsenal camps and they're with Barca camps and they're all over the place, right? I got players everywhere right now, and so it's just like I said, they're crazy. But if you're open with them and say, look, this is what I'm doing. This is where I want us to be a year from now, right? It was a funny, real quick story. When I took over the 2014s 2 years ago, I had a parent come up to me and go, hey, if because it was the first team building them, and they go, hey, if we do it, how long till we get the team playing the way you want them to play? And I'm like, if I do a really good job, like if I do an amazing job, 2 years from now, we'll be starting to play the way that I want us to play, right? We'll still start seeing soccer look like soccer. And he looked at me like I had 3 heads. 2 years, right? And I'm like, yeah, that's how long it takes. All right. I'm like, if you want to do it right and you want it to stick, right? So you've got to give them those kinds of time frames. And I'm like, look, you're going to need to write it out. So that's how I deal with parents. And if they don't like what I'm doing, I mean, the exit's big enough to drive the car through. So
I would say the more rules, the more you have to police. And that gets exhausting. So at the college level, and I have kids now, I can hear them upstairs. They just got home. But at the college level, I have parents come all the time to watch. Who am I to tell the kid from Iowa who's took a leap of faith and their parents are in town for 4 days not to watch their kid practice in the stands? We have 2 players from Japan. One I have to go pick up from the airport in 10 minutes who's getting in for the first time. Well, if her parents are in town, I'm going to give them a bench seat and tell them to watch, right? So I always say the more rules, the more you have to police. To his point, I think putting a plan out there is very important, where I think a lot of coaches, it's not just young, old, ignorant, coaches make the biggest mistake is they put a plan out there and then they give a timeline, and then when they fail, they're not accountable to their failure. And they're like, no, I just need like 6 more months, and 2 kids weren't here every Tuesday. Well, when you gave the plan, you should already know at 11-year-old, they're not all going to show up every day, right? So, but I think people are like, I just need another year. Could you imagine in college? I know I lost 2 games every year, but my plan is 7 years. And they'll be like, well, you have 6 months, right? So it's one of those, like, if you set a plan, that it goes to more rules, more policing. If you say you're going to win the state championship in June, then you better win it.
Yeah.
And don't come with excuses. Start by don't pigeonhole yourself by saying you're going to do something you only have influence over and not control over. So I think that I see the biggest issue. But my biggest thing is don't be afraid. if you're running a good session, what are you afraid of? And then to Carroll's point of you have to let them in a bit, especially in paying environments, so they feel like they can see it a bit. But it should never alter your coaching unless, here's your caveat, unless you are blind to something that the parent might see. And it could be like, hey, my kid doesn't do well, like in this, can you try doing that? Like if it's a reasonable conversation, it's a reasonable conversation, right? Like, hey, like they've had like parents got divorced. They've been having a struggle the last 3 weeks. Can you like maybe just give them all positivity, like no critique? I have to do it at the college level. Like I know they're having a bad week and I look at my assistants, no one critiques her on anything. Doesn't matter. Just give her high fives this week. And that's just part of it. Like you're in existence for 52 weeks. Every week can't be the most intense environment there is. So I think they can't totally control you, but when they do have a good point or a good awareness, you have to be aware of it, but also have the conversation. When you see a parent's involvement affecting the kid's development or coordinating with other players, then have the guts to have that conversation with the parent also. Hey, maybe you sneak in 30 minutes in the session or hide behind the tree. It's starting to affect your kid. And if they say no, then all right, well, if she's not good enough by the end of the year, we cut her, right? You know, because it's still like, and now I have kids, I see it. And I'm one of those people like, I don't need to be at their swim lessons. That's what they're coming back from right now. I don't need to be there, but I've snuck and watched from the window just where they don't see me because I enjoy it. So I think there's too many coaches sometimes that are like, I don't want parents there for fear they're going to critique me. Dude, you're in a public position. You're going to get critiqued walking down the street incorrectly and ordering the wrong drink at Starbucks. It does not matter, right? You know, and I forgot who said at the beginning, the tough skin comes with the job. You don't have to take abuse, but the tough skin comes with the job. And if you are intentional, transparent, competitive, and accountable, invite them. Tell them all to sit there and watch training.
All right.
Yeah, I agree. I'm on both of your guys' pages on that.
Last question. I really appreciate you taking the time to chat through this. And Katie, don't worry. I just said earlier, I don't know if you heard me or not, because you've been on and off. I will be sending the link to this so you can rewatch it to hear all the awesome answers. But last one. So this is one of those things we run into, I think, is how do you incorporate keepers into training when you don't actually even have a keeper coach? Like, do you need a keeper coach? Are keeper coaches over, like, is that a thing really that's needed? Some people, I don't know. I hear it both ways. Some people are like, do you isolate? That's another one. Like, do you isolate their training as well? I might be going down a rabbit hole here. But what do you do if you don't? I mean, it's Katie. She's the only coach. Maybe she has an assistant and she's trying to run a session. How can she help her keeper get better? Because I've done it before where you set up a session, you get no shots at all because the defense is too good. What do you do?
Let me go first because I got to go pick up my Japanese kid
Right on.
from the airport. Talk about technique. I think it goes to the Cruyffism. Every disadvantage has its advantages. So you just have to figure out what it is. Okay, well, maybe your player won't be as your goal player, as Franz Holk likes to call it now, won't be as good with handling, or their hand shape, but they're better with playing out of the back and playing through the lines or coaching their team, right? Like we had a year at the college I'm at, we didn't have a goalkeeper coach. And I outsourced information. I'm blessed to have a very good friend in Matt Bernard, who used to be a national team goalkeeper coach. And I'd set up Zoom meetings with him to have them. And then we'd give them YouTube videos to train each other. So they became better leaders, maybe not technically as good, but they became better leaders because they had to be accountable. And I'd go out there and strike balls 10 to 15 minutes before we'd set up training. And then they'd be in more of the session. And we, knowing it, that year, we had to we had to create sessions knowing they have to be a part of it, right? And at our level, I can't have my starting keeper, the neutral, in the middle of a 7v7+1 exercise ability to get kicked, right? But we can't have every drill being passed outside the square to the goalkeeper that can't be touched, right? So sometimes they would be the captain of the blue team, coach them. Okay, 2 minutes, timeout, go to your captain. You give them coaching points on what you saw in the game. So, but I also, and I got into a Twitter battle, I think it was last night or 2 nights ago. Every coach worth their salt in this country, if you're a head coach especially, I don't care what level, you might not be able to train the goalkeeper technically or correct them, but you should all be able to train and coach them tactically and functionally. And anyone who can't shouldn't be running it, because every CEO of a company can do a little bit of all the jobs and a specialist of a couple. Every American football coach came from special teams or offense, but still knows enough to be tactically aware of how linemen do it, how this do it. So I'm very big on, you used to be able to coach them tactically, involve them, but understand, the 10-year-old, you can probably put in every session in the middle, they're wiry, they're not getting hurt, but I can't put my starting all conference keeper in the middle of every exercise in September, but we had to. And I was like, okay, well, we're going to train what you 20 minutes for. You two watch this 5 YouTube videos that I found, train each other, become better leaders, become better ball strikers. Then we're going to have you part of the session in these parts, and then the other parts we're going to have you be the captain or coaching in the environment. So then it kind of goes back to, it's a disadvantage, but what is your advantage? They might become more independent, better leaders, tactically better, and better with their feet, but they're going to lose technique of handling, technique of diving, or whatever. But it might be a wash, and you might be even on goals because of it. And I got to go to the airport to go pick up my kid. But
I appreciate it.
Kid, one of our kids coming in. But I appreciate you guys. Thanks for having me. It was
Thanks,
awesome.
Coach.
And way to put together. I mean, diversity, male, female, every rainbow. You got Texas, its own country. You got the South, its own region. San Diego has its own beast. And I mean, I live 50 miles from my local club. So we've all been in such different environments. So it's a great atmosphere to learn from you guys and be around. So I'll see you guys later, and I'll wait on Twitter to see who shreds me for everything I said.
Appreciate it, Kai. And
Thanks, Kai.
I can't wait to hear more of Kai tomorrow, because I dropped his episode that I had a chat with him. It was awesome. So
Perfect. Peace out.
Amazing.
Anybody else want to add on to the idea of incorporating keepers when you don't have a actual keeper coach?
I'll be completely
Actually, I have
transparent.
a caveat to this question.
Ooh,
Go ahead.
caveat.
So I want to change direction, because I think Kai gives a lot of good answers to this question specifically. And if anyone wants to build on that, go ahead. But I also want to throw out another question that's kind of related. But during the warm-up for the game, so middle school boys, for example, there's no keeper coach. I only have, let's just say, like in this situation, I have one goalie. Or I guess this would be my club teams, because my school, we had 2. So club teams, we've got one goalie, no keeper coach. I'm the only coach. I don't even have an assistant. How do they warm up? Because for me, it's like a field player wants to go and warm them up. But it's like, well, I don't want you doing that. But then I also don't want the field players to not have me over there coaching. So this year I actually just let that happen. Like, I let a field player go over there, someone that didn't start and really didn't play a ton. She knew her role, and she was like, Coach, like, I want to go help our keeper warm up, because I know, I don't really need to warm up. And I'm like, okay. And that was fine. And it worked out. But is there a better way to do that? Is there not? I don't know. That's been tricky for me to try and figure out.
I'll be super transparent. I want to do more, but I don't always have the availability to be able to do that. I think that one of the things, especially for the middle school ages keepers, because everyone needs to warm up, no matter what you're doing. But like Kai said, it's that choices and consequences, right? So if your player is like, hey, I am going to go and warm this player up because I don't really need to warm up. Well, somebody got hurt and now she needs to warm up, and now she needs to be in there playing. And she didn't get the same warm up as everybody else because she was warming up the keeper because she didn't think that she was going to need to go in. So everybody needs to have their role in that we're all warming up. We're all ready to play the game. At least that's how I feel about that. It might not be the best solution or most popular, but if they're a specific goalkeeper and that's their role and they know that and their parents know that, they probably have a warm-up that their parents can help with to do on the side of the field before we get started. And then even at middle school, that's about the age that they are watching videos and they are things, and there actually are some warm-ups that they can do on their own, so that they're actually doing a warm-up and moving their feet. And like Kai said, there's that choices and consequences. So if they're going to do more warm-up with their feet with you, then they're probably going to be pretty technical with their feet, but they still do need some hand stuff and some diving stuff. At least that's how I feel. And so I know some of my keepers at high school, I'm blessed enough to have two, so they can warm each other up. But still, I need to give them some direction in what I want. I want to make sure you're getting those crosses. I want to make sure that you're trying long balls. I want to make sure that your distribution is also well. So like there, I think it's very important to have a keeper coach. And if you have the luxury of having somebody to help you with that, that's amazing. But if not, every role on the field is very, like he said, specified. And if you want to become a specialist at something, that's what you do. You figure out how to become a specialist at it.
Mike, what's your experience been in terms of warming up keepers?
Yeah, I generally don't. I gotta be honest with you. If I run so I play a 7v7, and so I typically have about 10 kids for a match, and I'll run a 4v4 plus 2 pre-match. I'll run a 25 to 30 minute 4v4 plus 2 pre-match, and my keeper will be the back target. My striker will be the top target, whoever's assigned to be that for the game. And I just if we play the way we're supposed to play, my keeper is going to touch the ball 50 times with his or her feet and maybe 3 or 4 times with their hands, right? And so I warm up the feet. All of our keepers got to be really, really good with their feet, because mine play at midfield, for crying out loud. They go all the way up. Mine don't stay in a box. So they're like a sweeper who can use their hands in the big box in the back. That's how my keepers play, right? That's all they are. They're like a center back who likes to wear gloves. That's how my keepers are. And so I just I do my positional play warm up, and trying to get them, several hundred touches with their feet prior to the match. And if they're warm, they're warm. I may throw 1 or 2 balls at them while they're walking off the field just to make sure their hands are working and not numb. But other than that, I don't really concern myself with it. I just make sure they're focused and that their feet and their legs are ready to go.
I have a question for you, Mike.
Sure.
So we've talked about like kids wanting to specialize. Even if do you have kids that are like, I want to be goalie?
I have a 75% of the time goalkeeper at U8, right? He wants to be a full-time goalkeeper, loves the position, but obviously the parents and I both think he needs to continue to do work. So you try to find a balance for the kid to where he feels like he's getting his positions, where he feels like he's getting his time in the goal. He loves playing in the goal. And if he comes to me and goes, "Hey, coach, can I come out?" I play him right out, right? I don't force him to stay in if he doesn't want to stay in. And so that's at my 2015s. At my 2014s, we do have a full-time goalkeeper who loves playing goalie. And the parents are fully in, and they go to like a goalkeeper trainer outside of the club. They do separate goalkeeper training and whatnot. And as you work your way up, yes, of course we do. For my 2016s, no, I don't. I rotate the kids. Nobody's stepped up and said, "Coach, I want to play goalie." We have kids that are good at it, but nobody has stepped up and said, "I want to do it." So I keep them in a rotation. I start a rotation for the season. I write it out. Rotation for the season. You're going to play this half. You're going to play this half. And then the second game, you're going to play this half. And then you're going to play in this half. And then the third game, you're going to play this half. And so the kids are just going to rotate all season until somebody steps up and says, "Hey, I want more minutes playing goalie." And then when that happens, then I'll start giving them more minutes. But I don't force it on any kids. The parents want somebody. Trust me, all the parents at the 2016, 2015, 2014s, they're like, if their team
We
doesn't
need
have
a keeper.
is there anybody who wants to be a goalkeeper? Why is my kid playing goalie? I get that all of the time. I'm like, "Is it from the rotation?" So I mean, it would be nice to have a kid want to specialize in it, but I'm not too focused on it because, like I said, if we're playing the way we're supposed to play, then a goalkeeper will get as many touches with his feet as a left back or a right back will for us, hopefully.
Any last questions here? I appreciate you all taking the time. I know Katie dealt with some technical issues and whatever, but this has been really cool for me because just the fact that like Katie and I got to chat and her chat is out there and published, and then for her just to reach out and then just to throw it out on Twitter and have what I consider 3 quality coaches to take the time to kind of hop on here and just talk soccer, I think is so stinking cool. And like Kai said, from all over the U.S. So it's so neat to be able to do that in this kind of setting. But I think that's all we've got to say for today. Katie, you got anything else on your mind you want to get out there, or are you good?
No, sorry for the technical issues. I don't know what's going on. I never have service out here, but usually I can make it work on my hotspot, but it's just not working with me today.
No worries. So this has been Kai, Mike, Jessica, and Katie off and on joining me. This is Karen with Coach's Corner Chats, and I'm out. Peace.
Thanks.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
Bye.